system, providing safe and affordable access to places and opportunities. The expansion of light rail in our city is a great example of this. And how we manage our street parking is an important piece as we seek to prioritize the different needs of all the people who live, work, and travel in Seattle. We are committed to making Seattle equitable, safe, sustainable, and livable for everyone. If you need technical assistance, please email judkinsparklr@seattle.gov. Live captioning through Teams is available. If you would like to turn captioning on, please go to your meeting controls at the top of your screen, and you will see more with 3 dots, and then go down to language and speech, and then show live captions. We will be turning on the chat function for the question and answer part of the hearing. Please save your questions until that time and then use the chat to ask your question. We won't be calling on hands. If you have a question that you would rather not put in the chat, you can also write to us at judkinsparklr@seattle.gov. That's the email address on this slide. It is not too late if you want to sign up to share a verbal comment tonight. You can still sign up until 6:30 p.m. using the SurveyMonkey link on this slide or in the meeting invitation. We'll also be putting the link in the chat. We are here this evening to listen to comments about the proposed restricted parking zone around the Judkins Park Light Rail Station. Though this project is related to the light rail station, tonight's event is about the proposed changes to street parking in this area. And that's the topic we would like to hear from you about. Another reminder that this presentation is being recorded and is subject to public disclosure. If you would prefer not to speak tonight, that is okay. You can email us or call us. We are accepting comments on our proposal up until Friday, October 4th. And we value and we're tracking all the comments we receive, no matter how they come to us. Verbal comments don't have any additional weight to them. So this is the plan for tonight's hearing, starting with welcome and introductions. After we introduce ourselves, I'll give a brief presentation about our proposed parking plan, as well as some information about the RPZ program and how RPZs work, as well as next steps for this project. After the presentation, we'll move into listening to your comments. The Seattle Municipal Code requires that when considering the creation of a new restricted parking zone, or large-scale changes to an existing zone, we hold a public hearing with an opportunity for public comment. After comments, there will be an opportunity for questions. And again, you can also reach us by email or phone with your questions. That contact information will be up on a slide at the end of the night. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions. I'll introduce myself and then I'm going to call on the rest of the team one by one. I'm Audra Bretcher. I work on many things related to the restricted parking zone program in the curbside management team at SDOT. Anna.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna Trevino. I'm an associate transportation planner on the curbside management team here at SDOT. Thank you.
Ruth.
Hi, my name is Ruth Harper. I am a senior transportation planner here on the curbside management team at SDOT and have worked on RPZ issues for many years.
Thanks, Ruth. Jonathan.
Hi there, I'm Jonathan Williams, also on the curbside management team, the curbside programs and projects supervisor at SDOT.
Mike.
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Guesty. I am the manager of curbside management at SDOT.
And I'm not sure if he's here. Matt Howard, are you here?
Yep, I'm here. Hi everyone, Matthew Howard. I work with public outreach in SDOT. My work spans across many different sections of Seattle, but primarily within the southern sector. Good to be here.
Thank you, Matt. Kurt Workman and John Arneson from Sound Transit are also here with us tonight, and they will be available during the Q&A part of the meeting. We are going to try to end around 7:30 to 7:45, but we can stay as late as 8 p.m. if needed. So why are we proposing changes to the street parking in this area? The reason is the planned Judkins Park Light Rail Station, which will be a stop along the East Link extension and a part of the 2 line. When the station opens, there will be an increased demand for street parking in the surrounding area, including commuters who may want to drive into the neighborhood and park on neighborhood streets before hopping on light rail to get to work. You may have heard this described as hide and ride. That's identified in the 3rd bullet on this slide. The Federal Transit Administration's environmental review for the East Link extension requires appropriate mitigation for parking impacts within a 1/4 mile of the station. That is why we, as SDOT, are working together with Sound Transit to develop a street parking plan. And this is the same approach we have taken in other light rail station areas throughout the city, including Capitol Hill, Columbia City, Othello, Rainier Beach, and the most recent example of this is an RPZ expansion when the Roosevelt Station opened in 2021. So to focus our work, we identified these project goals. We want to reduce all-day light rail commuter parking on neighborhood streets around the future light rail station. We want to prioritize parking for residents and provide short-term parking options for businesses, organizations, schools, and parks. And we want to encourage walking, biking, and use of public transportation to get to and from the light rail station. So as a first step in this project, we worked with Sound Transit to have a parking study completed in February 2023 to provide us with an understanding of baseline conditions. The study included vehicle occupancy rates for streets around the future station. We don't have time to go through the study in a detailed way this evening, but we have posted those occupancy findings from the study on our project website. The study also identifies specific recommendations that I've listed here on this slide and that are a part of our project proposal. So why have restricted parking zones? In residential neighborhoods near large parking demand generators, and when we say large parking demand generator, we mean something like a hospital or a university or a light rail station, in this case, to which there would be many daytime commuters. RPZs reduce all-day commuter parking, and they prioritize residential parking while allowing others to use the public streets. And related to the why, what are RPZs designed to do? They limit long-term commuter parking, and they also allow short-term parking for visitors. But RPZs do not manage demand amongst residents. All residents living in an RPZ are eligible for permits. The program does not discriminate between someone who lives in an apartment versus a single-family home, for example. And the program does not and cannot guarantee anyone a parking space in the public right-of-way. So not everyone is familiar with the RPZ program, so we do want to share some basic information about how they work. Signs like the one you see here are installed next to residences in a zone, and residents in the RPZ can buy permits that exempt them from the time limits, allowing them to park for up to 72 hours at a time. Our city streets are public, however, so non-permitted vehicles can still park, but are restricted to 2 hours while the sign restrictions are in effect. Each household can purchase up to 4 resident permits, though each vehicle must be registered at the RPZ eligible address. Each household can also purchase 1 guest permit. Guest permits are issued as hang tags and are valid for 2 years. Anyone visiting the resident can place the hang tag on their rearview mirror to be exempt from the RPZ restrictions. And each permit costs $95 for 2 years. There is also a $10 income eligible reduced fee available. And if you have a valid disabled placard or license plate on your vehicle, you are exempt from the RPZ restrictions and do not need to purchase an RPZ permit. Motorcycles also do not need a permit to be exempt from the time limits. By law, RPZ permit fees go back into the program to cover the costs of the RPZ program, which includes things like issuing permits and installing signs. And finally, unrestricted streets that are adjacent to existing RPZ sign streets can potentially have signs installed and join the zone as well through a petition process. RPZ boundaries can change. Because we only install RPZ signs next to residences, we also use other types of parking restrictions like regular time limits. That's the sign you see in the middle of this slide, and loading zones in appropriate locations throughout a zone. So this map shows our proposed project area indicated by the hatching around the two station entrances. You can see the station entrance on the west side on Rainier Avenue South, and then the station entrance to the east on 23rd Avenue South. As part of our work, we are proposing a new restricted parking zone approximately a quarter mile around the future Judkins Park light rail station, with RPZ signs placed next to residential addresses, limiting parking to a maximum of 2 hours from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday to Friday, unless you have a permit. And then we're also proposing 2 or 4 hour parking limits during the daytime next to non-residential places like businesses, schools, churches, and parks. And then we would install new load zones where they are needed for easy loading of people and goods. And then as a part of our work, we'll also be looking at the conditions of our streets and determining where we should be clear with signage about existing required clearances from parking near crosswalks and around intersections to make sure that drivers and pedestrians can see each other. So last February, we shared an online survey to gather information and to get feedback on our proposed plan. We especially wanted to learn if there was support for our project goals and if residents in the proposed area would like to have an RPZ. We don't have time tonight to go through all of the survey results, but the complete results are available on our project website, and the link is at the bottom of this slide. Out of the 585 people that responded to the survey, 84% of them, that's 483, said that they agree with our project goals. 10% do not support our goals, and 6% said they were unsure. And we asked residents in the project area if they would like RPZ signs on their street. And most residents are in favor of this. 75% of them responded yes, 16% responded no, and almost 10% of them were unsure. This slide shows us the major steps in the planning process and what's happening next. I mentioned the existing conditions study. We did some one-on-one engagement with organizations last fall and into winter. And then I talked about the survey we shared in February. And then this is where we are right now. After tonight's public hearing, we'll be working on reviewing all the feedback that we've received so that we can arrive at our final plan. We will be sharing that with you sometime in winter 2025. So this concludes our presentation. We can now move on to hearing your comments. So public comments are a time for you to make a public statement about this proposal. We will not be answering questions or engaging in conversation during your comment. If I see someone has their hand up, we will have a question and answer part of the hearing, but we're not going to be calling on raised hands. This is your time to speak. There will be time for questions after the public comment period. We will be using the online form that you filled out to call you by name in the order that you signed up to speak. So Anna's going to be calling 3 names at once so that you'll know when your turn is coming up. And when it is your turn, she will unmute you so that you can speak. Please mute yourself when you're done speaking. Public comments are being recorded, and there are 2 formal requirements. You must state your first and last name at the beginning of your comment, and each person will have no more than 2 minutes to speak. At a minute and a half, Anna will let you know you have 30 more seconds so that you have time to wrap up your thoughts. And please be respectful. I am going to be putting the proposed plan slide up so that if you want to refer to it while you're giving your comment, you can see it.
Great, thank you, Audra. So the first 3 people that we'll hear testimony for are Oleg Dusayev, Reagan Wesley Kirschner, and Brenda Leeks. So I will unmute you once I find you in the attendee list. If there's anyone who has a question or but is not signed up to speak, you're welcome to email the box Judkins Park LR@seattle.gov, and we can answer your question there. So I will find our speakers here. Thanks for your patience, everyone. If you are signed up to speak, I guess this can be a helpful time. If you are signed up to speak, you can use the raise hand function, so it will populate your name to the top of the list and I'll have an easier time finding you. I see Brenda's popped up and she was one of our first 3. So Brenda, I will allow you to unmute your microphone and you will have 2 minutes to make your comment. Please remember to state your first and last name before speaking, and your time will begin once you begin speaking.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Leeks. I am the head of school at Seattle Girls School, which is one of 3 schools in the proposed RPZ zone. I also happen to live also within the RPZ zone. So as a resident, I am one of those people who filled out the form saying definitely in favor. As a person who works in the area at a school, I just wanted to ask that there be additional consideration of schools. The other schools, the Hamlin Robinson School has 100 or so employees. Thurgood Marshall, which is a public school, has 50 to 60 employees, and Seattle Girls School has 30 employees. All of us have some parking on our school sites, but certainly not enough for all of our employees. We definitely rely on the neighborhood residential parking, and the idea of a 2 to 4 hour parking zone for our employees, which would mean that they would have to leave school during the day to move. And of course, if it were 2 hours, that would be a considerable burden in terms of scheduling and ensuring that there were spots for them to move their cars to. In preparation for this, I want to say that I know that Seattle Girls School, and I believe that Thurgood Marshall and Hamlin Robinson are also talking to their employees about public transportation. A number of our employees already use public transportation, and a number of them indicated, like Seattle Girls School in particular, about 20% of our employees said they would be using the light rail and therefore not driving once it came online. And still, this is a considerable impact, and we're just asking that either the longer extended timeline for schools be approved as part of the plan, or that there be an opportunity for school employees to apply for permits so that they can park and not have to move their cars multiple times during the day. Because stepping away from children is not easy to do. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Brenda. Great. So I don't see Oleg or Reagan on the list. If you are here and your name is different than what's on the list, please send an email to judkinsparklr@seattle.gov, and we can circle back to you. But our next 3 speakers in the order that they signed up are Andrew Kada, Kareem Yamut, and Paul Brian Crane. So if you can raise your hand, that would be great. You'll pop you to the top of the list. If you don't know where the raise hand function is, it's at the top bar of top of your screen. There's a little hand, so you can raise that up, and I will allow you to unmute your microphone. to speak. So we'll first hear from Andrew. Remember to please state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes. That will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Andrew Cotta. I live within a quarter mile of the new station, and I took a look at the 2022 occupancy study showing parking on my street and many others in the area have overnight occupancy of greater than 85%, which tells us the street parking for the neighborhood is already constrained. When the new station opens, there's going to be a lot of new housing and businesses opening, daytime and nighttime commuters, people who are going to be going to events at the International District and in the area of Seattle. I believe that the city is trying to mitigate these types of hide and ride commuters, whether they're going to their jobs or other events. So I believe the city should implement time limits for short-term visitors from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m., Mondays through Saturdays. In addition to permits for residents, I think that there should be permits available to businesses located in the RPZ, such as the schools that were just mentioned. And I think time limits that are consistent into the nighttime are consistent with the RPZ next to other major event venues like the Seattle Center. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Andrew. Next, we will hear from Kareem Yamut. Kareem, I'm going to allow you to unmute your microphone. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Kareem Yamut. I'm a resident on Hiawatha Place South, one of the streets northwest of the station in the RPZ. I'm also here to bring forward concerns about the RPZ proposal. I was also able to find that vehicle occupancy study done in 2022. While the station's currently not set to open until Q4 2025, almost 3 years after that. The study, when I looked at it, focused on the streets northwest of the station, seemed to hover around 60% occupancy. But since the study, there's been widespread residential development in the area, which has significantly increased those occupancy rates. And after discussing with neighbors on my street and the adjacent streets on South Charles and Davis Place, our observations indicate that street parking is consistently over 90% full. And this is as early as 6 a.m. when I'm leaving for the office, and sometimes even into the evenings up until 8, 9, 10 p.m. When comparing this info to that 2022 study, that's almost a 50% increase in just 2 years. So I believe this suggests that the current hours are likely to be unconservative, given that the data is based on, will be 3 years old by the time the station opens, and the vehicle occupancy is continuing to increase amidst the ongoing property development. I'd like to propose extending those hours to start at 6 a.m. and continue until 10 p.m. and also to include Saturdays. I think this better reflects the increased occupancy and will better accommodate parking for the residents. I also think it will save time and resources for the city by avoiding their study after the station opening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem. Appreciate your comment. All right, our next 3 speakers. I don't see Paul Byron Crane. So Paul, if you're here, please send an email to Judkins Park Light Rail and we will call on you. But our next 3 are Jason Custer, Kevin McIntosh, and Karen Stuhldreher. So if you're here, please raise your hand to pop you to the top of the list, or I can look for you in the list. So our first again is Jason Custer. Jason, I'm going to allow your microphone. Please state your name for the record, and your 2 minutes will begin when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Jason Custer. I'm a resident. I live on Hiawatha Place South. In general, I'm very in favor of the restricted parking zone plan being implemented. As previous commenters have said, it's, street parking is already a challenge in the area, and I'm glad the city is doing something to address that. I think when I've lived in prior restricted parking zone areas, I would regularly see people parking with parking tickets. And to some extent, I think there are some people who decide that they are just going to get a parking ticket and park in the area. I know that there's, not a huge amount that can be done about that, but from prior times living in those areas, the parking zone does not completely stop people from doing it. And, it may just be, it costs an extra, $40 to park here. and I'm fine with that. You know, the any individual coming to park there, and so I am hopeful that there are ways that the city could reduce the incidence of that, whether that is increased fines for violation of the restricted parking zone, or towing or other programs similar to that. But otherwise, you know, I think it's a good step in the right direction. But I anticipate seeing people violating it
30
nonetheless.
seconds.
And otherwise, I'm still very excited about the restricted parking zone. So thank you all for your hard work on this program.
Thank you, Jason, for your comment. Next, we will hear from Kevin McIntosh.
Hi, my name is Kevin McIntosh. I live within the RPZ over on Charles and 25th, right on the edge. The two things that I want to say or three things. First, I'm excited. I think that this is going to be something that's useful, and I appreciate what has been demonstrated and called on. I didn't actually know where the funds were going to go, which was going to be one of my comments. Second part, in addition to the previous speaker, it's not really clear to me what enforcement's going to be. I move around all Seattle pretty regularly, and there's just a lot of people that either flout the rules or are not necessarily going to make that work. Like they're going to follow them, or that they're just going to get lucky. Lastly, I do have a lot of friends that do come and visit me, and thankfully it's not during the weekend, so thankfully that clarified. But I'm still a little bit concerned about like the visitor passes and like what I should be doing about that. And even though I have off-street parking with my particular place, should I go purchase like one of these these permits? So I think that it's now that I'm kind of getting ramped up, and I appreciate other people on this call that have been able to actually go do the research, and I appreciate that deeply. I feel like I'm just like getting caught up on everything that's going on in my neighborhood. So maybe more outreach in the future. But excited. I do think that this does have to happen, and obviously the devil's in the details. And I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Kevin, for your comment. We will next hear from Karen Stuhldreher. Karen, please state your name for the record, and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Karen Stuhldreher, and I live right on Judkins Park at 21st and South Norman. Been here for about 30 years. And my comment's just a little bit different. I'm concerned about looking at the slide of the proposed plan, the fourth piece down at the bottom there. I'm very supportive of the new restricted parking zone and think that we need it given light rail and all. We are just anecdotally on just the 21st and South Norman, those two streets, over the last decade or so, we've lost, I think, 4 single-family houses that have been replaced by 22 townhouses that have very limited parking connected to them. So we have, as other people have talked about, you know, not very many parking places on these two streets, and I'm sure this is true on other streets as well. And what my concern is that there are parking spaces that are very valuable in the area, but they are close to crosswalks, to curbs. They're close to driveways on both sides, and so as part of the work, when you come to evaluate the street conditions and decide we're indicating existing clearances from parking, I'm worried about losing really excellent parking spaces already that are there. So that's what my concern is. And this area, seconds. Because the park is right here, there's not a, you know, if you can't find parking in your neighborhood, like on your street, there's not a lot of streets that you can go to. I just came back from San Francisco, and, you know, you could go up and down many streets to find another parking space. But with the park here and the limited number of streets, that's not very easy to do. So losing these parking spaces between curb, whatever the cutaways or near driveways, that's my big concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'll queue up our next 3 speakers. We will first hear from Margot Jones, then Ann McNally, and then Woody Fuller, So Margot, you're welcome to unmute yourself and give your comment. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, good evening. My name is Margot Jones. I'm a long-term resident here in Judkins Park. I've been here for 28 years. I have never had a problem with trying to find a parking space to park in front of my house until the last probably 10 years. I am in favor of the RPZ, but I am also asking and requesting the city that residents that have been here, especially long-term residents, that there's some type of waived fee for the parking pass. I do realize it's only $95, but when we pay astronomical property taxes already, and we're used to parking in front of our homes, and you guys decided to put this the light rail here in our neighborhood, I think that's something you should consider. In regards to the outreach for this particular project, I'd like to see more people that have been here in this neighborhood on this call. So I feel like your outreach has not been to the people that have been in this neighborhood for decades, calling this central district their home. So I'd like to talk more about how we can get people to help with the outreach so more voices can be heard. My last comment to this is that I am the organizer of Emoji Fest, which happens in Judkins Park every summer. And with that, this will cause a big, we'll see how we'll have to partner some kind of way so that people can park at the park when they come for Emoji Fest and Seafair in the summertime. So I would love to talk to whoever is responsible for like working with this so we can see how we can work together to help support the community that comes back that has been displaced because gentrification. Thank you.
Thank you, Margo, for your comment. We will next hear from Anne McNally. Anne, please state your name for the record. Your time will be given when you begin speaking. Anne, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. You will need to unmute your microphone. There you go. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Anne McNally. I live on 20th, I live on Dearborn between 20th and the Park, right by Franz, and I support the RPZ wholeheartedly, and I think you should go big. I support short time limits, 2 hours, not 4. I support it going from early in the day to late at night, and I was very happy to see that you expanded it 1 block north, and I think it would be excellent to expand it all the way to Jackson so that it encompasses the area from Rainier up to Washington Middle School, or I guess 23rd, along Jackson, because I can see a lot of people going to sneak in on Lane and King. I was also going to echo what other people have said, which is that I've lived here 15 years and housing has boomed on 23rd and Jackson, which is fantastic. But it has made parking tight. And so I think we're getting pressure from all kinds of directions. That's it. Thank you. Hi, neighbors. Good to see you all.
Thank you for your comment, Anne. Next, we'll hear from Woody Fuller. Woody, please state your name for the record. You're welcome to begin speaking. Woody, I'm just going to ask if you're here again. You will need to unmute your microphone, and then you can begin talking. All right, Woody, we can circle back to you. We still can't hear you. I'll give you 1 more sec. I see that you're not muted. Okay, we will circle back to Woody. Woody, if you're having issues, please send an email to the email in the chat and we'll try and help you out. Next, we will hear from Casey B. Casey, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Casey Bush. I live on Martin Luther King between Massachusetts and Grand Street. I guess I had more of a question. In the first proposals that I saw for this, it did include Martin Luther King, and there is parking outside my house. It does seem like, and the proposal I'm looking at now does not have the RPZ there. I support the RPZ, and we lost a ton of parking along Martin Luther King when they put in the bike lanes, and so I'm just concerned about not being included in the RPZ because the street will be the first street where it wouldn't be, and the very little bit of parking that we continue to have here just seems like that will be used and abused to for the station. So I just wanted to say that I think that Martin Luther King should be included. And that is end of my statement. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we will hear from Teresa Everett. Teresa, you're welcome to unmute yourself. Please state your name for the record, and your time will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Teresa Everett, and I am an employee at Atlantic Street Center. Atlantic Street Center is located at 2103 South Atlantic Street, between 23rd Avenue and Rainier Avenue, off of Massachusetts. So we bump right up against the I-90 corridor, where the light rail is on top of the lid. We have many concerns. One also includes outreach. Because we remember the feasibility study, but we don't remember getting much communication from that point. Also, another big concern for Atlantic Street Center is safety. There is more foot traffic in that area, and our buildings have been broken into numerous times, to where we have an ongoing conversation with the Seattle Police Department. Most recently, we just had to replace our HVAC system, and it cost us about $100,000. So we're concerned about the additional foot traffic that's going to happen in that area, and what safety concerns have been addressed. And then also, because the Atlantic Street Center, we're a nonprofit organization, and we've been around for 114 years, probably 80, 90 years on that street alone. We're concerned about what happens with our staff, because commuters are already parking on that street. And so what happens with our staff that have to drive in, they have to use their cars to do outreach in the community. A 2 to 4 hour parking limit puts them at risk of getting parking tickets, and they're already low income families. So we have staff that are low income. And so we're concerned about those things and making sure. We're concerned about those things, parking for our staff, the outreach or lack of that we've received about the proposed plan, and also safety. So we would like to be more involved, and we would also like those issues addressed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Teresa. Next, we will hear from Kyle Carter. Kyle, you're welcome to unmute yourself. Please state your name for the record, and your time will begin when you start speaking.
Hi, my name is Kyle Carter. I live on South Grand Street, and I actually live in the little like blip at the bottom that's kind of empty on the map. I was just curious on if like we could maybe fill in that portion, because there is a lot of parking over in that area that's like, I guess, like parking, but it's not parking. But if like that could get filled in, and then possibly like propose more of the area down south to be like reserved parking, only because there's a lot of like encampments that are getting built up in this neighborhood. And I feel like mitigating or like putting in more reserved parking and like having it like zoned, and people coming out, like officers or parking enforcement officers coming out and like actually paying more attention to that area, then we wouldn't have as many encampments. And that's basically my main concern. Other than that, I'm really for this. I think it's a great idea. And also kind of referring back to like the first suggestion as well with like the schools. There are a couple of schools in this area, and I feel like the faculty deserve to have an option as well to purchase a parking pass so that they can park in the area as well. Other than that, thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment, Kyle. We will circle back to Woody Fuller. Woody, if you'd like to try again to make your comment, please state your name for the record. All right, Woody's having some technical issues, so he will write in his comment. Thanks for communicating that. For those of you who have your hand raised who we've not called on, the registration period for giving verbal comment is closed. You're welcome to write your comment in, or if you have questions, you're welcome to put those in the chat during the question and answer portion of the meeting. I'm just going to call one more time for Oleg Dusayev or Reagan Wesley Kirschner, who we did not see on the call. If you're here, I don't see you, but if you're here, please lift up your hand so that I can find you, or send me an email at Judkins Park Light Rail, and I will try and get you unmuted. I guess we do have a little bit of time left in our meeting, so I will, those Patrick and Ruby, I see that you both have your hands raised. We will give you the floor now to state your comments. I'm going to unmute Patrick first. He had his hand raised first. Patrick Burns, I'm going to allow you to unmute your microphone. You please state your name for the record, and you're welcome to give your verbal comment. Call again on Patrick. If you'd like to speak, please go ahead. Okay, Patrick, we can't hear you. So please, if you have a comment you'd like to share, you're welcome to write that into judkinsparklr@seattle.gov, and we'll take your comment that way. Ruby, I'm going to allow you to comment, or please state your name for the record, and your time will begin when you are unmuted and begin speaking.
My name is Ruby Holland, and I live on MLK around King Street. I've lived in Atlanta for 30 years, and every single train station that they had in Atlanta had free parking attached to it. Also, I've heard here in Seattle that the stations up north in Shoreline and places like that have free parking attached to it. And also, I know that there are no train stations in sprawling Magnolia and Laurelhurst and and places like that. So I'm thinking that this is another burden placed on our community that, along with the upzoning and the apartments and townhomes that do not have parking, that do not have to have parking. So I'm just trying to say that it's been an ongoing onslaught to our community to make us uncomfortable, put additional burdens on us. And I also would like to say that the outreach has not been good. There hasn't been any outreach to people of color, that's neighbors that have been here forever. So, something needs to be addressed because it's really just another form of racism that have been attacking the urban villages.
Thank you for your comment, Ruby. I will give Patrick another opportunity to unmute himself and give his remarks. Patrick, if you'd like to speak, please go ahead. Okay, Patrick, we're still not hearing you, so please feel free to write in your comment to the email box. The last person I see who wants to make a comment is Paul. Paul, you're welcome to make a comment. I'm going to allow your microphone. You're welcome to unmute yourself. Please state your name for the record, and your time will begin when you start speaking. As a reminder, Paul, you do just need to unmute your microphone. We can't hear you right now. Okay, Paul, I'm still not able to hear you, so please again, feel free to write in your comment to the box. We do treat all comments equally, verbal and written comments, so we appreciate you being here and taking the opportunity to share your comment. Carter, if you would like to speak, excuse me, you should be able to unmute your microphone and give your comment. Please state your full name for the record. Again, that was Carter. If you would like to give a verbal comment, you can do so now.
Sorry, it took me a second. I'm Carter Fisk. Overall, excited about restricted parking zone. I am right on the border on Dearborn at Hiawatha, and I just want to second or third the concerns about the study having been done a couple years ago, as our parking is already really maxed out. So also want to second the concern about maybe moving the boundary north into Lane or all the way to Jackson. That makes a lot of sense based on the increased parking occupancy as it is. I'm also a business owner of a home business, and it's client-based business, and so my clients are here for 3 to 4 hours. So I'm just interested in knowing more about how businesses in this area will get permits. Thanks.
Thanks, Carter. Again, I'm going to give Patrick and Paul one last opportunity to unmute themselves and give your remarks. So if either of you would like to speak, you're welcome to do so now. Just please state your name for the record.
So this is Patrick Burns.
Yes, go ahead.
I live between Massachusetts and Grand Street. The kind of thing that I'm personally worried about, I feel selfish. You know, I'm lucky enough to have a driveway, but I think will there be signage for driveways to keep people from parking? Because this is going to create a lot more pressure in this area. And I think considering that would be important. And I just want to appreciate the kind of comments I've heard from people who actually study this, and appreciate the neighbors who came and participated. Thank you for having this, but I guess do better outreach too. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Patrick. We appreciate your comment. Paul, last chance if you'd like to unmute and give your comment, please do so now. Okay, with no word from Paul. Again, if there's anyone who would like to give comment, after today's hearing, we will be accepting comments until October 4th. You're welcome to write them into the email. I will drop all that information in the chat for you now so that you can access that. It's also on the project website where you were able to register for this meeting. So if you are looking for that information, you can find it on our website. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Audra.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone who commented tonight. Now we'll be able to take some questions from you. We will be enabling the chat function for the Q&A. We're not going to be calling on raised hands in this case. We ask that you use the chat function to ask us questions. And please don't use the chat function for side conversations. If you click on chat at the top of your screen, the chat window will appear to the right of your main screen. If you're on a computer, we'll be reading your questions in the order that we receive them, and then one of us will respond. If there are similar questions, we may combine them.
Okay, thank you for those of you who are writing in questions. The first question is about MLK and why that is not included in the zone, the proposed zone.
Yeah, I think I can respond to that one, Anna. It was not removed from the zone. The boundaries that you see in the proposal, they come from the requirement of the environmental review for the station, which has us focusing on the quarter mile around the station. We want to be very careful and not overreach because we understand that not everyone wants an RPZ, and we also know, you may have heard me mention before, that we have a well-established process for expanding an RPZ if we see that that's needed. And then in the case of RPZ, that's an arterial. Arterials also serve as we find they often serve as pretty good boundaries. In this case, we may find that we do need to extend, but this was our starting point.
The next question that came in is about permits. So if we sell more permits than there are spaces on the street.
I can take that one. Hi, this is Ruth. We will potentially sell more permits than there are parking spaces on the street. As we said in the presentation, the RPZ program unfortunately cannot manage demand between residents, and so an RPZ permit is not a guarantee of a parking space. It happens in many RPZs that we sell more permits than there are spaces on the street. So yes.
The next question that I see in the chat is about what options are being considered for the school employees in this area.
I can take that one. Hi, this is Jonathan Williams. I mean, right now the plan, we're not planning to offer employee permits in the area. We do appreciate the feedback from tonight and other comments we've received. We'll be going through those as we finalize the plan. You know, we do recognize that some current teachers and other employees in the area, you know, use on-street parking. This will be a change for them. I think one of the schools mentioned, you know, about light rail providing a new option. We are hoping that employees in the proposed area will find the light rail station will make transit more feasible with more frequent service throughout more of the day. There will also be some bus transit improvements in the area as well, connecting to light rail. And right now, the plan is, you know, in aligning with many city goals and sort of adopted plans, our focus is on for commute trips is really to provide improvements that encourage employees to utilize walk, bike, and transit options when available.
And the next question is about why areas east of MLK were not included, such as Irving Street, which is often used as parking for Sam Smith Park and the tennis courts.
Areas east of MLK, Anna?
Yes, Audra.
Okay, I think the kind of my same response that MLK was not removed and why we're trying to adhere, being mindful of the requirement and adhere at least initially to the quarter mile also applies in this case.
There's a question about this meeting recording and whether it will be made available to neighbors so that they can hear the comments in the presentation.
Yes. I actually tried to answer that in the chat. So yes, it will be available. It'll be on our website in a few days.
The next question is about weekend or evening hide and ride for people attending Mariners or Seahawks games in the stadium area.
I'll jump in on that one. Hi, this is Jonathan again. So I think as Audra mentioned, the proposed restrictions are consistent with those at Mount Baker, Beacon Hill, other light rail station areas. We did mention sort of the how this came to be initially was tied to environmental review and mitigation with Link Light Rail. There was a focus on AM and PM commuters and not wanting the neighborhood to be sort of a go-to for those maybe commuting to Bellevue or downtown Seattle. We do understand, and I think some have shared tonight, that parking in the evening can be a challenge for residents returning to the area. I will say during that time, it often is, you know, residents or their guests looking for parking. Those are folks who would be eligible for permits. Right now, the proposal is that it would be a daytime only. It is a condition that we can, you know, review that. Like I think we mentioned reviewing boundaries as well. But really, the focus has been on sort of the daily AM and PM commuters, which is the approach we've taken with all other light rail stations.
The next question is about residents on 24th Avenue South in the corner of South Dearborn who are addressed to 24th Avenue South, if they will be eligible for permits.
So we'd really need to know your exact address. It really depends. If you're on a corner that is eligible, then you would be eligible. I think we proposed both sides of Dearborn to be eligible. So what I would like to, excuse me, is if you could just email us at that email address, Judkins Park LR, with your exact address, then we can answer that question, you know, in the next few days.
And the next question is about options for improving parking by parks like Jimi Hendrix Park, if there's any consideration on how to improve parking for that destination.
Jonathan, you want to talk about parks?
Well, I believe we have engaged with parks. There are, I think, a number of parking lots at parks that are within this quarter mile. That is sort of a parking lot that they manage. I think they also are sensitive to trying to balance the needs for folks coming to the park, but also not having, you know, it become an informal park and ride lot. So I would say some of those discussions are ongoing. If you've got comments or concerns about a specific park location, so there's a lot of comments to track, you can send us an email and we can share what feedback we may have received from Seattle Parks so far.
And the next question is just about outreach. And we've heard some concerns here, so what will we do to address those concerns and feelings about outreach in the community?
Yeah, I can address that, Anna. There is some information that's on our project website, but I can give you some detailed information here. On winter 2023, 2024, we did some early engagement individual efforts with schools, churches, business, and organizations like Children's Play Garden, Northwest African American Museum. I am sorry that the call didn't come through, but I did both call and email Atlantic Street Center in February. Also the Eritrean Hall Community Center, contacting them individually and meeting with many of them. And then our February 2024 mailing went to all the addresses in the project area plus a buffer area. And the February mailing had a QR code with a survey. And to support awareness of the survey, we had a blog post, social media efforts, and this got picked up by Cairo. We've coordinated with Department of Neighborhoods community liaisons who have shared information about the project with their contacts, and I saw that they posted this in their newsletters. I've shared project information flyers at a community event for the ribbon cutting of the Judkins Park Station Access Project. So I was there handing out flyers. We've given presentations at the Jackson Place Community Council meeting. Our project website, of course. Margot, who spoke tonight, gave me some tips. And so I've called and emailed Africatown Community Land Trust, as well as the Facts, the newspaper, the Facts. Let's see. And then we had the second mailer. I think that's probably a pretty good summation, but we are always open to hearing more suggestions.
And to follow up on what Audra's saying, this is Matt Howard, by the way, outreach. Outreach is an ongoing action. We're trying to consistently plug different projects at different times. I was actually the public outreach lead for the Judkins Park Access Station project. So the goal was to get the word out there about this project at the same time, because there was that overlap and we understood that, not everything happens in a silo. Sometimes the outreach happens, as Audra said, in the context of other projects as well. And we want to keep people in the loop. So please continue to give us this information, email the email address, the inbox, and we can continue to log these things and make sure that they're understood.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, everyone. And if you have people you would like us to reach out to, you're welcome to send that information to the email. That would be a better place to put that than in the chat of this meeting. The next question is from someone who has a license for an Airbnb from the city, and they are wondering about if it's possible for them to get a second guest permit, or if they are now limited to only renting to Airbnb guests that have one car.
Yeah, I'll take that one. This is a new one for me. I've actually never heard of an Airbnb guest needing two cars that are renting, but so it's not something I hear commonly. However, we only do provide one guest permit. That is, there's a rule across the city for any RPZ. We do have single day permits that you can get a single day permit for $1. You can get up to 50 of them in the year, but only 5 of them it's like a party permit, 5 of them for one night. But I don't know if this Airbnb has any off-street parking or not. Also, the fact that right now the proposal does have weekends free, so you would not need a permit to park on the weekends or really overnight if there really is a second car for an Airbnb. So those are the policies, and we are firm on those. So thank you.
Thanks. We have another question about enforcement, how the RPZs are enforced.
Was it like the mechanics of how they're enforced? I'm sorry.
Just generally, how will the RPZ be enforced?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we had a number of comments about enforcement prior tonight and heard some tonight. And I think there were some folks commenting on people getting tickets, things like that. We do coordinate really closely with Seattle Police Department parking enforcement. They have attended our planning meetings and informed the plan we're looking at today. It is a pretty big shift from the situation today. Right now, if parking around residential streets does not have any restriction, anyone can show up and park for up to 72 hours, which is citywide. And a lot of that enforcement, I'm sure many of you have experienced, it's on a complaint basis. Adding these posted restrictions, so as proposed 2 hours during the day except by permit, that would bring more enforcement into the neighborhood to enforce those restrictions. It also allows them to use some more efficient tools, but they would be enforcing the time limits and, if there's other infractions like hydrants as well, that would be something that they are doing in the neighborhood. And, this would be moving the neighborhood from where there are, there's no management. It's a little more, as I said, sort of request and respond. This would lead to more officers out there enforcing the RPZ.
Our next question is about if we will be painting designated parking stalls on the streets of the RPZ.
So yeah, I'll take that one. We don't paint designated stalls on streets in Seattle. I mean, parallel. Occasionally they will do them for angled, but we find actually that if we were to paint them, there would be fewer parking spaces, not more, because there's a certain standard that we have to paint them. Also, we can't really manage that level of paint, so there is no stall markings in RPZs, in any RPZs really in the city. And while I'm talking about stall markings, I just thought I would quickly jump in and respond to Patrick's question about signage around driveways that you made during the presentation, during your comment. We don't install signage around driveways. However, all residents are able to go paint 5 feet of yellow around their driveways, and we find that is a pretty good visual cue for people not to block driveways. It's not perfect. It's never perfect, but that is something that people do all around the city. So just wanted to throw that in.
There's a question about if the Department of Transportation has considered adding some gutters on the south side of the park between 23rd and 24th and Grand and Massachusetts, and that impact on parking capacity there.
I guess go ahead, Ruth.
Well, I was just going to say, Patrick, if you wouldn't mind just, let's say, copying that over into an email, we can take it to the right people. That would be a capital improvement. So do you have anything to say, Jonathan, on that?
I agree with what you said, and typically a lot of those improvements are made when there's development there. But if you've got a location, or if you send us an email, we can let you know if there is any capital project there or any other information on that block.
Great. Next question is about how neighbor feedback, like what we're hearing tonight, and parking data, newer parking data from after station opening, how that will be incorporated into the final plan.
Audra, do you want to take that one?
Sure, Ruth, thanks. Well, we're coding all of the comments that we receive and categorizing them so that we can see like how many comments we received about different topics. I can tell you that from our first round back in February, when we released our initial proposal, we initially proposed 2 different zones, and it had a slightly different boundary. And so we reviewed all the comments that we received out of that survey and through our email. And that is why we revised our proposal into a single zone and also expanded it northward. So we'll be doing the same thing here. We'll be looking at the types and the quantities of comments that we receive and looking at conditions, but also, we do care about staying true to our project goals and what the original intent of the project is.
This is a good question for Jonathan. One of the challenges that one of these folks is seeing is waste management. They're having trouble with waste management, not giving time to pick up garbage or yard waste. And so they have to leave parking spaces open during business hours for that. If there's something we can, Teresa's asking if there's anything we can do to help with that situation.
Yeah, if you could send us an email with the location, we can look. Often the trash collection or solutions are very location specific. Sometimes we may end up needing to sign. And I just scroll up to your question. Okay. I think, Teresa, if you could email us the address, we do coordinate with SPU waste collection, which is also often happens on or near the curb, and we could talk with them and you about that specific location. I think that would be a good way to address that one.
The next question is just generally about when the RPZ permits will become available, when the RPZ will be installed.
So the permits will become available and the signs will go up really right before the station opens. And so we don't have that exact information today. But there'll be mailings and give you time to get your permits, and ideally the signs should be up. You should have your permits before the signs go up too. So that's also a goal. So there's just coordination that happens, and that happens just right before station opening.
The next question is about if the plan has taken into account the increased density in the new zoning that doesn't require parking, if that's a good trigger to have longer hours, and then what happens if permit holders need to leave their car for longer than 72 hours. So a couple questions in one there.
Jonathan.
On the last part, the more than 72 hours. 72 hours is the citywide maximum for leaving a car on a public street. That typically is enforced based on complaint. I know that can be challenging if you are traveling out of the area for a while. Sometimes we recommend folks look to see if there is off-street parking, or perhaps a friend can move your car. But the RPZ permit does not exclude one from the 72-hour rule. Anna, what were the questions?
Oh, I'll let you. I was going to say answer the first part. And also the 72-hour rule. I mean, really, you should check on a car that's parked in the public right of way almost every 24 hours, because there could be signs that go up for some project or something like that. So it's just a good idea to keep an eye on your car in general. So the rest of the question, Anna, you want to read that, or Jonathan, do you see it?
Yeah, I'm happy to read that again. It's just about if this plan has taken into account increased density in the neighborhood, new zoning that doesn't require parking.
Sure. So, in lots of areas of Seattle, there's not been off-street parking requirements for new development for a while. I think they date back to around 2008. It's sort of the rationale there is that structured parking is really expensive to build, and reduced or lower parking requirements, or the developer building what they need to pencil out the project and sell the units does bring more housing units onto the market and provide more housing opportunities. I would say that I think we mentioned earlier, the RPZ program is open to all residents that live within the area. So if there are more residents in the area, that means there will be more residents that could have the option of buying a permit if they have a car. We do hope that with light rail there and other travel options, it may be attractive for folks that maybe want to seek sort of a car light or have one fewer car or maybe no car with frequent transit next door.
And then the last part of Sean's question, I don't want us to skip over why the hours that are proposed, why the hours of the proposed RPZ are what they are.
I think Audra, you talked to
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think this relates strongly to our project goals, which is we want to limit all day, like the all day commuters. So that's a typical time that people commute, and it's also standard with other RPZs along light rail stations. So we do want to have some consistency. Consistency helps with enforcement. It also helps with, the public understanding what's expected in an RPZ.
The next question is just about kind of the broader traffic impact. If we have planned expansions for traffic calmings like roundabouts to reduce the incidence of people traveling to and from the station speeding or otherwise driving dangerously.
We don't have roundabouts planned. I mean, some of the things that we have a neighborhood traffic calming division that works on things like that. And I think that generally, though it may sound counterintuitive, when you have streets that are very parked up, it's really hard to speed through those streets, right? And so we find that parking on both sides of a narrow street might not exist in other cities actually works well in Seattle to slow people down. And then I guess we're sort of hoping that there's not a lot of people really driving to this station, if that makes sense.
The next question is about if RPZ permits will be limited to the residents and how the residents will be verified. I'm happy to speak to that one. Under the rules of the RPZ program, permits are only granted to vehicles that are registered to a residence within the RPZ. So if your vehicle is registered to your address and you live within the RPZ, you are eligible for a permit. If your vehicle is not registered to your address within the RPZ, you'll either need to change your registration to match your address to get a permit, or you will not be eligible for a permit. The next question is about how many permits can a nonprofit or a business request?
I think we talked about this a little bit before, but we can go over it again. So we are not planning at this time to offer permits to employees or non-residents within the RPZ. We're mindful of our project goal. We want to reduce all-day commuter parking within the zone. And we do have a very small program, but and it was passed by City Council, but there's very specific criteria that we need to consider. And some of the criteria are proximity to transit. In this case, this zone will be very close to transit. And the other consideration is how many cars there are on the street. So if the streets are more than 50% full, for example, then it's not something that we can do. So right now we are not planning to offer permits to employees. I do have some very good information on our project website about Commute Seattle that offers free consultation services about commute options for employers, and as well as information about Orca Business Passport.
Thanks. And there's also a question about if there's a mailing list. I believe there is one on the project website, but there's a place to register for information, Audra.
Yes, or you can just send an email or we can gather your email from this meeting. For the second mailing, we right now have a mailing list of about 350 people. So we emailed those people when we sent out the second mailer as well and can include you going forward.
The next question is about if the city will revise its allocation of permits to residents or businesses to reflect the modern environment and needs.
I think we've sort of talked around this, Andrew. I appreciate that, your suggestion is, we should have a sort of different rules. And so we will always take that under consideration. So thank you.
To Justin's question about the southern border, I think we've talked a little bit about Borders and edges are ready with the quarter mile. So if you have, Justin, if you have any more concerns or comments, you're welcome to send us an email about those. The next question is about 25th Avenue South. Is a dead-end street, and the streets does not have curbs, which can make it difficult when people park. If there's any, so Anthony's wondering if there's any consideration around parking conditions and any necessary adjustments.
So I will say when assuming the plan moves forward and signs are installed, we will be looking at, parking conditions that are on the block and seeing, I don't know specifically about that block, but if it is an issue where vehicles are parking on sidewalks, we may, or we likely would use signage to perhaps indicate parallel parking, or definitely to discourage parking on the intersection. It is challenging on streets without a defined curb. Cars may park in different configurations. We will be posting signs, but we do want to make sure that the pedestrian visibility and safety is also maintained on those streets as well.
Thanks. There was just a question generally about safety concerns, how those are being addressed.
I think
Go ahead,
Jonathan.
Audra.
I
Jonathan?
think Jonathan was getting at some of that in his last comments, but I'm flipping back to the proposed slide. As we go about our work, if this plan moves forward and as we go about our work, installing signs, like part of that work is looking at street conditions and looking at if there's existing issues about cars parking too close to crosswalks, because we do want to make sure that drivers can see pedestrians and vice versa. I don't know if there's other more specific safety concerns that were intended here.
I guess, Teresa, just thinking of what your comments were during the hearing, I mean, safety is something the city works on all the time, and there's the police department, community outreach people within that group. So it's a big issue that I don't know that in the RPZ program and signage can necessarily address all the safety concerns that you're maybe talking about that exist in the city, frankly.
Just a reminder that we would like to reserve the meeting chat for questions. So if you have comments or other information, please, you're welcome to send that to Judkins Park Light Rail at seattle.gov. The next question is about considerations specifically for Sundays. This person has noticed that Sunday density is quite challenging with churches in the area. So if we have any thoughts or feelings about Sunday restrictions.
We have very few Sunday restrictions, frankly, in the city. To be frank, there's not always enforcement resources for Sunday restrictions. We also are sensitive to people who want to attend church and things like that. So I don't think that an RPZ is going to change that, nor would we want to stop people from those types of activities. So it's really rare. I don't think we have any daytime Sunday restrictions in any RPZs in the city. I'm 99% sure on that.
And also, this is Kurt Workman. I work for Sound Transit in community outreach. And if I could just take a second to address that comment in particular, or that question. As we get closer to the station opening, we have a team who will work on station activation, and part of that is outreach to places like churches and employers who can help pass the word along to their congregations and employees about how to take transit to get to those. So you mentioned specifically folks coming from outside the area. That's a great opportunity to use some of those park and rides in Mercer Island, in South Bellevue, in Federal Way, in Linwood and Shoreline that we've been opening to get into this area and attend those services without parking in the neighborhood, if that's feasible.
Thank you.
We have a comment or just a question because we've heard quite a lot about neighbors who would like, expanded blocks in the RPZ. If we could just have a little bit more explanation about the process to expand an RPZ.
Yeah, once the RPZ is in existence, and I'd say with the new RPZ, we'd probably want to wait, 4 to 6 months for things to settle. But then residents on any block can request that the RPZ is expanded to that block, and we look into how full it is. We do sort of a mini study, not as big as this study, obviously. And then there's a petition process that requires 60% of the number of residential units need to approve that they want to be part of the RPZ. And then we can expand to that block. So it does happen in existing RPZs.
To James's point, just a reminder or a repetition of what we talked about earlier about driveway painting. All residents are welcome to paint 5 feet on either side of their driveway with yellow paint to kind of help put a visual cue on the street of the clearance requirements around driveways. So that you're welcome to paint 5 feet next to your driveway in yellow.
I see a question. I don't know if we went past this or so many questions. If you have a disability placard or plate, you do not need an RPZ permit. You can park in the RPZ without that permit. So that's for Margot.
And again, Rhonda, to your question about or point about residents not having or visitors, the guest hang tag that you can purchase is if you hand that to your guests to put in their vehicle, they can park at just like it's just like a resident permit, they can park beyond the 2-hour restriction with that guest hang tag. And there's also our short-term visitor permits as well. The short-term permits. To Jerry's question, the cost of permits are $95 for a 2-year eligibility period, or they're valid for over a 2-year period. And there is a $10 income eligible permit that is available, and there are a list of the criteria for that income eligible permit on our website. If you'd like for more information about that, you're also welcome to email us and we can share that information with you. Someone is just asking about the question about sports teams, and I think just to reiterate, would like some more information about sports teams and park and ride or hide and ride for events closer to downtown Seattle.
Yeah, we can talk about that again. So these restrictions that we're proposing here, they're consistent with what we have at Mount Baker, Beacon Hill, and other light rail stations that do also currently connect to the stadium area stations. And there are park and ride facilities at other stations along line 2. And we also talked about the intent of our project that went into recommending. The whole reason why we're recommending an RPZ is that we're focused on all day light rail commuter parking. We understand that parking in the evening can be a challenge for residents, but a lot of times an RPZ is not going to solve existing or future residential parking congestion. So I don't know if that helps.
I see the fee question.
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
So we don't have planned fee increases. We actually had a fee increase in 2023, and that was the first fee increase since 2010, or maybe it was 2022 from 2011. It was many, many years. So it's not something we do often. The RPZ fee it's for a 2-year permit. And then once again, we do have an income eligible permit available. The RPZ fee really covers just the costs of this program, the cost of our staff time, signage. By law, the RPZ permit program can make no money, so it is its own cost center. It just needs to basically break even. And so we had that first fee increase over many years, just like 2 years ago. So I understand that that it does cost something. So I appreciate that. Let's see. How long will it take? Now I'm just reading permits. I've taken over. I'm going to get slapped later. You can get your permits. I mean, a guest permit, if you when you apply, you should probably apply for a guest permit so you'll have that hang tag available for people to come over, and that's a hang tag that you just don't that you can use on many cars, and you want to make sure and not lose that. And then the single day permits that are available, the party permits, you can apply for those online, and they're basically you get the permits and print them out and put them on cars. So that's how I'd answer that one. The mailers. We do our very best, and we use a mailing house, and generally we find that it gets to most people. But I appreciate Andrew. I'm sorry that you didn't get the mailer. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet.
Hey, Ruth, I see
No,
that
that's okay.
I misunderstood the sports team question. So can I
Oh,
speak to
okay.
that? It was about working with kids soccer and baseball leagues. I am
Oh,
familiar with this. My daughter has soccer practice there. Many soccer and baseball teams play in Judkins Park. So we do have, we are in touch and have been in coordination with the parks contact for this area. So I think talking to him about this, about how we could talk to them and make sure they're aware of the changes. I think that's a good step that we can take. Thank you for clarifying, Karen.
Max had a question about working with neighborhood schools and what that looks like and what we need from them to reconsider that permit option. I don't know if we want to speak to that again.
I can jump in. And I can tell you that this is one that's among the hardest ones for us to kind of get at. We want to make sure that these schools are thriving, that the teachers have access to their students, that everybody feels safe. We also recognize those are folks who are employees trying to get to destinations within the RPZ. And this one's a challenge for us. We've provided RPZ permits in other locations, but where the parking demand has not been as high as it is here. So the best answer I can give you is that is one we are seriously looking at and trying to figure out what's the best way we can continue to collaborate with the schools that are in the proposed RPZ boundaries. Give their teachers the options available, but recognize that there may be some circumstances where some teachers can't use transit for whatever reason, and we want to stay in touch with them. But we certainly have heard that comment and take it to heart, and are trying to figure out if there are other options for us on that.
Andrew had a question about just what is defined as all day, I think, as we keep referring to all day commuter parking, and if this RPZ needs to be the same as other RPZs in the city.
By all day, I think we mean the proposed restrictions, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And there's a second part of the question, Anna.
Just if this RPZ needs to, why this RPZ needs to be the same as some of the other zones.
I think consistency is important. I think we want to have consistency across the city. It also helps with enforcement. And I think we would need a really compelling reason to divert from the purpose of our project. I think we really want to stay focused on our project goals as we propose and implement restrictions here. And we've also seen that this works in similar light rail station areas.
There's a question about the impact of RPZ on property values. I don't know if we have information about that, but others may know or could speak to that.
I do not know about the impact on property values.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, I was looking for the actual question. I couldn't find it. I mean, we have RPZs sort of across the city. You can look, with 30 some RPZs out there. So they are in, many different areas of the city where, there are different property values there. I don't know that there's a correlation between those.
The next question that I see is about bike lane changes. If there are bike lane changes being considered in the RPZ to improve safety traveling to and from the station.
I might add, and Matt Howard was here earlier. Unfortunately, he had to go, but he mentioned working on the MLK bike lane project, which was recently completed. So that is a project sort of in the area as part of the restricted parking zone. There are not necessarily bike lanes tied to this work directly. I know there were additional improvements near the station with some lighting and adding, I believe, there are bike runnels to some of the existing stairs. We do have the Seattle Transportation Plan guides our investments and improvements in where we're planning bike facilities. I personally am not aware of other ones that are in the pipeline here, but I think that's something we could look into and maybe add on the website if there is some information.
There's a question about, I think this refers back to our Sunday parking question and conversation about why church-going people are being prioritized over residents or other people.
We don't prioritize people over other people. So I'm just going to say we don't do that.
Yeah, I think more as Ruth to the original answer there. There are, I believe, almost no RPZs on Sundays. And currently there is fairly low enforcement on Sundays. It is the folks that are out there working generally are responding to complaints or blocked driveways, not doing, they're not really set up to do extensive RPZ enforcement on Sundays currently.
We also do not enforce paid parking on Sundays, so it's kind of a citywide policy that parking is less restricted on Sundays. There's a question from Grace about getting the city to require any new residential developments in the RPZ to include off-street parking for all units. I think this is something that Jonathan spoke to a little bit earlier.
Yeah, so I don't mean to be overly bureaucratic. There is different groups at the city that manage sort of permitting development and the different code sections. I would say there have been changes to parking rules in the past. I would not expect, though, that there would be a change to go back to add new parking requirements near light rail stations. I think I spoke earlier. The idea is, having flexible parking requirements, structured parking especially, is really expensive to build. There's been some studies that it lowers the amount of housing that is built. And typically in the city and sort of our comp plan goals, we do want to support more housing and density near our light rail station and take advantage of that high capacity and frequent transit. So I would say it does, it's not up to, we don't set the rules, or our SDOT doesn't set the rules around sort of private development, but it would seem unlikely to add parking requirements back to some of those areas.
There's a question about adding the parking fee for the RPZ permits, if that's kind of a form of regressive taxation, and so I will let Mike take that one.
Sure, I'm happy to. I think Ruth might have described it a little bit before. This is really a fee for the services and covering the costs of the installation of signs and enforcement that allow us basically to regulate the right of way out here in the curb and to provide the service. It's not a fee per se. I mean, a tax per se. It really is a fee for the signs and the program itself.
Thanks. Looks like the questions are slowing down, so we can wrap up here pretty soon if there are no other questions. But there is a question about who to reach out to at the department about potholes and bad roads. Jonathan just dropped information in the chat about where you can access information and who to reach out to about that, Marco. You can also submit a Find It Fix It request through the website or through the Find It Fix It app.
And Margot, I have your email, so I can follow up with you too. Okay, I think, are we
Yeah, go
winding
ahead, Andrea.
down here?
I think
Okay.
that's kind of what we've finished out our questions.
Okay. Thank you everyone so much for taking time out of your evening to attend tonight's hearing, and thank you so much for your comments and questions. We will be posting this presentation on our project website. And if you have more questions after tonight, that's okay. Please email or call us. I think I mentioned this earlier, but we are taking comments up until October 4th. We will be working on evaluating all the feedback we've received as we settle on a final plan, and we will be sharing that with you in winter 2025. Thank you.
Thank you.